Greetings! Welcome to the devlog for hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. I had originally planned to have an update ready for this week, but the big system that I've been working on with a good friend of mine, Arthur, this past week, is not yet ready to put into place. And what that is the new loading system that the game desperately needs. I've covered this in past devlogs, but for those of you who don't know, the basic summary of the problem is that for users loading off of a mechanical hard drive, the game can take up to, say, like 2.5 minutes to load. And what ends up happening is that because that first scene takes that long to initialize, by the time it loads, something internal to the engine has timed out, and they don't have functioning hand controllers as a result. It's like the engine loses its connection to the actual hardware. And so, and then the second problem has been the fact that the way that I've been loading things before, which is basically throw it in the Unity resources folder, packs that all into a single file, which is not maximally compressed, and has a 4 gig limit, and I hit that limit a couple weeks ago. And so we've been going through the process of basically rebundling large sections of assets in the game and asynchronously loading them over the first like 10 to 30 seconds that you're in the game standing in the main menu scene, so that we can get you into the main menu scene much faster. The downside to this has to do, and it's why this is taking a bit longer, is that Unity has some, let's just say, irritating behavior in regards to sort of like where it places assets that exist in scenes into various packages, especially when they no longer are in the resources folder. We basically pull them out of there into specific sort of like firearm asset bundles. But the problem is because they're not in resources anymore, if I just have firearms laying out in scenes, that data gets put into those scene package files now. So in the process of trying to make this problem better, I somehow made the build size of the game 1.5 gigs larger when it should have been getting closer to 1.5 gigs smaller. And what this basically means is I have to go in and clean up and change the way almost every scene in the game works. But it's totally doable. It's basically, instead of just having firearms laying out in the scene file, a reference to them will be present that will tell it when to sort of, you know, spawn it right at scene load. You shouldn't notice any difference in this behavior, but it will help bring the build size of the game way down as a result. But along that way, because of the positive side to all of this, is that because I essentially have to go through and open up every single scene in the game and do a little bit of work, I'm going to take the opportunity over this next week to do a little bit of polish pass work on a bunch of the scenes, which I actually started the other day, some of which I think you're going to quite like. So along what's going to be coming with that polish pass, so this is going to be present in next week's update, is I decided, even though I'm going to be building a next generation of bot-worst enemies that'll be more complex, folks are right, I keep getting this request, the worst world ones are fun, so I'm going to be swapping out their weapons and exchanging cowboy hats for something else, and those are going to find their way for next update into the arena and the breaching scene, as long as the pathfinding in the breaching scene is just barely wide enough. I think it is for them. I have to double check, but they're definitely going to go into the arena, so you'll be able to fight those in a bunch of different contexts. I'm going to probably do 3 of my, in the way that those bots have like their little illustrative sort of wooden metal weapons that don't look real per se, they look more like a prop. I'm going to do like an M9, an MP5, and an M4 in that style, and equip the bots with them. So there'll be some nice variation. And they'll probably be, I'll probably, when I put them in the arena and in the breaching scene, if they go in, I'm probably going to have like an easy and a hard mode for them. Easy, they'll have the like projectiles that are going through the air at only at about like 20 to 30 meters, so you can still kind of dodge them, and full speed projectiles just because I'm curious to see how that works, and if people just get wrecked fighting them. So I'm super curious. So that's going in next week. What else do we have here? Oh, I am, especially because of just the influx lately of tons more front-facing Oculus users, I'm going to go ahead and get a Robo Recall style teleport in. I was just evaluating how to patch it into my spidery, overcomplex, and brittle locomotion system last night, and it should be doable. When it's in, it's going to function very similar to the touchpad locomotion, in that by default, like in the default state when you've loaded in, neither of your controllers does anything in locomotion-wise, and you can enable the ability for a touchpad/joystick to do that type of teleport by clicking the menu button. So for toggling it on and off, you'll be able to steal it between hands, just like the touchpad locomotion. And of course, this is because we still need to be able to use the touchpad for joystick for things that you're holding. So you're going to be able to toggle in and out of that state. It's going to be the same sort of, you touch the touchpad or joystick in which engages the teleport ray, and then rolling it left and right basically picks the facing. So that will be in as long as nothing explodes, but that should totally be in next week. And then the big one is I've been doing a little bit of a spit polish tune-up for Meat Grinder. Just going ahead and getting it out of the way, because I already had to change some things about the scene and how it loads assets like the firearm. So I had to rebuild its proc-gen system for spawning equipment, and in the process expanded its sort of weapon table significantly. So prior to the version that's on the store right now, I think each of the 4 core weapon classes that can spawn, there's only like 4 to 6 options, and then the melee weapons, whereas now there's close to, all put together, about 60 firearms can spawn in it now, which I spent a whole bunch of time playing last night and is fantastic. I've tuned a bunch of stuff in regards to the proc gen. I'm continuing to. Right now, the office area is where like most of the equipment ends up being. So you tend to cluster in that area, which was never really my intent. So equipment spawn frequency has dropped in the office, and I'm adding new types of equipment spawn to the other 3 areas. So no matter where you find yourself in the maze, there's going to be some equipment. And all the like static equipment, i.e. like, oh, the MP7's always here, has been removed. That was a stopgap I did because I just didn't have the time then to rebuild the proc gen tables. But that's been done now, so. And then to go with that, to go with the new weapons in that table, there's going to be some new enemies. I actually modified one of the worst world bots and gave him a short-range shotgun that fires fire, basically like Dragon's Breath rounds. He's dark red, and he comes at you in the dark, and it's quite terrifying and perfect. He's really fun to fight with melee weapons as well, because you're just knocking around the various segments of him. So that's going to be in, and I'm looking to squeak in another 1 to 2 other little enemies in there quickly based on stuff that I already have partially built. So yeah, so that, oh, and the last most important thing is, because a bunch of people have been like, man, I just want to play, I don't want to like have to race through Meat Grinder. I'd like more enemies but no time limit. And so there's going to basically be an arena mode, or I'll pick a better name for it, lever in the scene before you go into Meat Grinder, where you eat the hot dog, that will allow you to engage that mode. And when you do it, basically you can still finish it by getting the 3 pieces of meat, bringing them back to the grinder, but the clock will no longer tick down if you want to play it in that mode. You'll basically get the version of the narrator's monologue where he doesn't mention how much time you have, and you'll just go from there. So hopefully that should make that mode much more replayable to those of you who have enjoyed it. So yeah, so that is the plan. That is my ramble on what is going on and what will be ready for next week. I'm a little frustrated that that I've had to rearrange my schedule a bit. But this was, in many ways, a much-needed thing that needed to happen. Putting in the new loading system has forced me to actually, like, audit and take a look at the way that I'm loading lots of data in the game, whether the way that I'm loading groups of data files and configurations for the various modes is the most optimal way to do that, is the most data efficient way on disk, is synchronous versus asynchronous, and whether that's the correct decision for that given system. So overall, it's great for the structural health of the game long term, and it's going to make it far more stable and hopefully easy to scale as time goes on. So one of the most important things, I guess, for this whole game has been a transition from me from going from, I would say, a kludgy creative coder to being a responsible programmer / engineer in terms of organizing everything well. And building software that remains robust as it gets bigger. So this is just another chapter in that journey. And yeah, and it will be accompanied by some fun new stuff for you folks to play with next week. So I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Peace.